All right, it's a sad state of affairs here. It appears that I'm by myself. Gresh is busy. James Patrick is busy with his team, and we don't know what's going on with Larry, the Ukrainian Melnick. So we have our. First of all, I do need to reach out. And we mentioned Ukraine, and I don't want to make it seem insensitive what's going on in the Ukraine with all the people there lost lives and everything's happened. So we want to make sure we make that very clear. We get started. But a lot of people don't realize that on the show In the Box, that is now one box, is me. We have our own genealogists on staff. And I don't know of any other show in the world really that has their own genealogist on staff. We call him Deebs, a little bit of a nickname because we have to keep him secret because of the nature of his business. Deb, how are you doing? Deebs has done a little bit of digging on the Melnick name. And again, I just want to be very clear. I don't want to seem like we're insensitive to everything's going on. But so this is more about Larry Melnick than the situation over in Ukraine. But the most common surname in all of Ukraine actually is Melnick, in case people didn't know that. And I do need to see Mel's lack of showing up today. He doesn't even notify me that he's not showing up. I just want everybody to know where it's at with Larry and his performance, how far things have dropped, and how much work we have to do with him. So Deebs, our genealogist, has he's researched and said the most common surname in all of Ukraine is Melnick. 1 in every 331 people in the Ukraine has the last name Melnick. Can you imagine that? I mean, it's pretty sad. But all right. For comparison, he said in Canada, if you exclude Smith as the most common last name, as in Steve Smith, who shot the puck in his own net, and Larry Melnick's friend, his neighbor there, Melnick, in all of Canada, there's not as many Melnicks as there are in UK. So let me say that again. Smith, for comparison, in Canada, if you exclude the most common last name, Smith, there is no other last name in all of Canada that is used as common as Melnick is in the Ukraine. The second most popular Canadian name is Brown. That's 1 in every 338. Whereas in Ukraine, Melnick is one of every 331. 94% of all Melnicks in the world live in the Ukraine. That's 141,000 Ukrainians 141,000 Melnicks in the Ukraine. Let me see here. So now on a little personal history. Larry Melnick, he's a third-generation Canadian, but his Melnick line traces directly to the Ukraine. Larry's great-grandfather, Stephen Melnick, fled from the Ukraine with his wife, Maria, in 1902 during very turbulent times that saw the Russian Revolution. Everybody knows Little Smitty. Oh, that's right. There's Thomas Smith. That's right. The Smiths. That's another Smith, too. And I apologize, Tom. I apologize. I did not include you in that with the Steve Smith category. Over a 3-year period from 1902 to 1905, several hundred Ukrainian families, including Larry's great-grandparents, Stephen and Marie, fled the Ukraine to settle in Duck Lake, Saskatchewan. Now, that's a very creative name. I'm sure there was a duck in the lake, and somebody said, we're going to call that Duck Lake. And that's where Larry and his family settled. It was near Prince Albert, where for filing a $10 fee, each received 160 acres of land in exchange for clearing at least 15 acres and farming it for at least 3 years. So that's how Larry's family got started. All of Stephen and Mary Melnick's children were born in Canada, including their oldest son, John, who was Larry's grandpa. Larry's dad was nicknamed Zani. I think we knew that already, but Zani, his dad's real name is Joseph. So that's a little history on Larry Melnick and how important his family is in the country of Ukraine. So maybe that's why Larry's not here. He's been busy with the people in Ukraine. So once again, we're down to, let's do a little history of this show. So it started about 2 years ago, I think. And we had Ron Duguay, Ron Greshner, Dave Maloney, and myself. So we got rid of, or they quit, Duguay and Maloney, and we kept Gresh. And then we've replaced that with James Patrick and Larry Melnick. That's right. The popular Ukrainian. So now it's down to, and I give James Patrick a pass because he's busy. He's coaching his junior team. So we'll let him away with that. Ron, he just notified me that he can't do the show, and that's all I know about him. I hope he's okay. I haven't seen him around. His truck is outside And then Larry Melnick just has disappeared in Plum Springs someplace. So I don't know what's going on. It's just me by myself now with the show. Actually, I had promoted because I didn't hear from Larry that Larry had finally gotten his way and that he just wanted him and I be on the show. So that's down to me. So again, we'll go over that information about Larry and his Ukrainian background from our own genealogist, Deebs. Nobody else has a genealogist, but we do. Susan Brooks, any plans on a comeback like Sean Avery? No, Susan. Actually, we're going up to Ron Gresham and I are going up to a really fun event tomorrow. We're going up to Binghamton, New York. A wonderful woman, Jennifer O'Brien, is putting on. She does a lot of stuff with. I hope I say this correctly. Mentally handicapped young kids. So there's a hockey tournament out there. This family, I guess, has an outdoor rink they built on their farm, and they have a tournament all day Saturday, all day Sunday. I think we have a barbecue or something on Saturday night. Tournament. So Ron and I are going to be guest coaches. I think I'm going to be a guest referee at some point as well. So looking forward to that. That's a lot of fun. We had a great day yesterday too. Mel and I are planning. So Mel and I are planning to help fight in Ukraine. Again, I want to be really careful too. We can joke around a little bit about the whole Ukraine thing. So Billy Kontradidiak here, him and Mel are tight buddies, both Ukrainians. I just want to make sure that if we say anything fun pertaining, I don't want to sound insensitive to what's going on in the families over there in the Ukraine that have lost people and all the upheaval and all that. So be careful of that. But so actually I had a fun day yesterday too. Myself and Adam Graves are on the ice at Madison Square Garden, and we had a fun time. But there's a lot of sponsors, and Adam's funny. Adam's kind of quiet. People that don't know him, he comes off as kind of quiet, but he's actually got a great sense of humor. We were at an event about 4 or 5 years ago, and people were coming over getting autographs, and he and I were sitting together. And I started saying to people, I said, it's really great to be here with Adam. I really enjoyed watching him when I was a little kid. Obviously, I'm older than Adam is, and we really don't know each other that well at that point. He's looking at me like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, something wrong. So he caught on to the fact that I was maybe a little bit of a smart ass, and now we joke around. So he calls me, what does he call me? He calls me Dad now, and I call him Grandpa. So he's a great guy. A lot of fun. Had a good time on the ice skating around. Any update on the Ranger Island alumni game? Yes, it is at the Islander practice facility. Is that Eisenhower Park? I believe that is. That's where they practice. And it's in April, I believe. Again, I'll get that date out there. We'll promote that. I'm assuming the proceeds go to some charity, but we'll find out more details and I'll post that. So again, just in case anybody missed it here, we got a late start. I don't know if it's a compliment that they think I can do the show by myself, or it's like I should be offended that I've gone from. We started off with Duguay, Maloney, Greshner. Duguay and Maloney left. We replaced them with Patrick and Melnick, and now it's just me for the show. So that's where we're at. All right, so let's go over this Melnick stuff again, and we can get really straighten this out. Maybe we can go in more detail this. So again, just to be clear, probably I don't know of any other show out there, TV, wherever it is, online, where we have their own genealogist on staff. This is in the box. Maybe it's a record, we're breaking some new ground or whatever it is. But so our genealogist, and we'll call him Deebs because of the nature of his business and trying to keep him a little secret. So the most common family surname in all of Ukraine is Melnick. That is correct. Let me see if I can get that off there. Okay, so the most common family surname in Ukraine is Melnick. 1 out of every 331 people in the Ukraine has the last name Melnick. Can you imagine? Now, is that good or bad? I'm not sure how to look at that for those poor people. For comparison, in Canada, if you exclude the most common last name, which is Smith, as in Steve Smith, Tom Smith, one of our listeners here, and Steve Smith, who shot the puck with his own net, Melnick is the last name in all of Canada. That is Melnick is in Ukraine. The second most popular Canadian name is Brown. That's interesting. Dave Brown. So Melnick, Brown, and Smith, all the connections there. 90% of all Melnicks in the world live in Ukraine. 141,000 Ukrainians are Melnicks. The name Melnick translates to Miller. So Mel should probably drink Miller instead of Pabst Blue Ribbon. but he does not. Now, a little personal history on Larry Melnick. He is a third-generation Canadian, but his Melnick line traces directly to the Ukraine. Larry's great-grandfather, Stephen Melnick, fled from Ukraine with his wife, Maria, in 1902 during very turbulent times that soon led to the first Russian Revolution. That's a very important part of history. Over a 3-year period, which is 1902 to 1905, several hundred Ukrainian families, including Larry's great-grandparents, Stephen and Marie, fled the Ukraine to settle in Duck Lake. Now, once again, to me, that's a very creative name, right? I mean, how would you get the name Duck Lake? I'm assuming there's a duck on the lake, and somebody said, we're going to call it Duck Lake. Pretty simple, right? So they settled Duck Lake, which is near Prince Albert, for a $10 filing fee. Each received 160 acres of land in exchange for clearing at least 15 acres and farming it for at least 3 years. All of Stephen and Marie Melnick's children were born in Canada, including their oldest son, John, who was Larry's grandpa. Sure, he was a wonderful human being. Larry's dad was nicknamed Zonnie. His real name is Joseph. So just make sure everybody saw that. What's that? Hey, Tom, let's hear about your roots. My roots. That's interesting. So when I got done playing Survivor, when I was on Survivor, I played this Elaine Stott. She was a Kentucky farm girl. We got to be really good friends because of the farming background. So we did a little bit of a show. I'm sure some of you guys watched it. And so Deebs, our genealogist, that probably nobody else has a genealogist, he did a little research. And 125 years ago, my family was living in some county in England. Yeah, so we miss Elaine too. So maybe we'll try to get Elaine back on. She was pretty funny. She's picking on me all the time, calling me pops and dad and everything. Elaine's family and my family lived in the neighboring counties in England. And apparently they came over. My family obviously came over to Canada, and it's a similar kind of deal. The British, they want to build up the British militia in Canada. So they're giving out, I believe it was 100 acres or 150 acres of land free. You can just have the land. So my family the family came over, farmed the land. The deal was that if there was ever a conflict, that they had to fight for the British militia while over in Canada. So that I didn't ever know. And finally, my father and grandfather sold the farm, and I never really thought to ask where it started. You know, it's like you're younger and concentrating on everything else. So that's where my family roots came from. And so English, but I think I'm English and Scottish and Irish and all that kind of stuff in it too. So John brings up, how's your book coming? Oh, all right. Susan, good point. Thank you. So I'm in the process of writing a book. It's called True Grit Life. And that's been a fantastic process. And I recommend to anybody, even if you don't plan on publishing your book, to really go through the process. So for me, it was, I wanted to be a motivational, educational book. I didn't want to be about my life story. I didn't think anybody would be that interested about it really. But it's more about, mistakes I made, things I did in the past, how I recovered from it. And I'm pretty happy with it. We were trying to rush it through to get it done for Christmas. We didn't have enough to it. We felt like, the content we had, we were really happy with it, but we want to get more to it. And I'm very fortunate in my life. As most of you people know, I'm always doing things now and out meeting new people, again, like the Survivor thing and meeting Navy SEALs and doing all this kind of stuff with them. And so I'm learning new things all the time. So we're adding to the book all the time. So we were in kind of a rush to get the book done and realized, well, the longer we let it go, and if I continue doing the things that I'm doing and meeting new people and having new opportunities, that there's more to add to the book. So that's really where it's at. I'm hoping in the next 3 to 4 months, we can wrap it up. But again, that's been a fun process, and just learning about, what it's really done for me is looking back in my life. And I said, I've done some pretty stupid things. It's funny when there's some of the things I didn't ever want to repeat. Like I've told a story a few times about how I was trying out for the Canadian Olympic team and decided the first night of training camp that it would be a great idea to go out for a few adult beverages and then put the furniture from the TV room out on the trainer's car and let him know that. I've told that story before. And the next day thinking, and I really did, this is how crazy it was. At that time, I thought, well, this is fun. This is a bonding thing for all the guys. And woke up the next morning, and the Father Bauer, who ran Hockey Canada, handed me a plane ticket home that I had been cut for the team. So I'd given him exactly what he needed, somebody to show everybody, okay, this is what we're not doing here. So those kind of things, I did not want to repeat those things in the past, but I felt like what happened was when I went back to college, it was my senior year, I was so embarrassed and so motivated to make up for that stupid mistake that I had a fantastic year. The team had a great year. and ended up signing my contract with the Rangers after that season. So the point of the story was, in that chapter, was to show people, listen, you are going to make mistakes. You're going to do the wrong thing, but it's what you do about it afterwards that really matters. So finally told that story. But it is funny when I tell a story, when I go to schools now and I'll tell that story, and it's kind of like, oh God, do I want to tell that story or not? But this is terrible. This is not nice. None of Mel's ancestors were named in the Oilers book either. So just so you know, as we've talked about in this show, and I don't like bringing these things up because I think it's kind of embarrassing to Mel. So I like to, keep it quiet. But so it's just between us girls here. There was a book written by a woman that outlined the whole history of the Edmonton Oilers, the Cups, and everything like that. And only one person was not named in the book, and that was Larry Melnick. So again, I don't like to bring that up. I think that's kind of sad. But somebody was mentioning here too about. Actually, you know what, Deb? A proofreader? Yes, we may need that. Thank you very much. Yes, Deb's volunteering. Thank you, Deb. Very good. And I do think, yes, best New York Times bestseller. I don't think it's going to be that. I'm really happy with the book, though, because we did a version at first, and it was too much about my history, and I didn't really want that. I wanted to be like going through the things I experienced, but more, how people. Again, I really try to stress with people. Like, and any team that I ever played on coming up as a kid, I was never the best player. I try to show people that if you want to accomplish your goals, you don't have to be the best out there. It's like showing up every day and doing your job, doing your work, being that team player, and not just in terms of a team, but it's your family, your work situation, whatever it is. So, Ira, where has Ira been? Here he is. Ira was named in the book of Top 10 Simple. I mean, Mel was named in the book. That's funny. Good job, Ira. Very funny. For the first time in for 2 years, you're funny. Actually, no, that's not fair. Ira has had some good ones. But I mean, if you look at the percentages, though, like Ira writes so much stuff and writes so improperly, very little of it is funny. So when he finally gets one, I guess we got to give him credit for it. So Danny Erickson asked a great question. Would I still smash a stick over it at scoring a goal? Okay. You know what? I probably would. So I was up in Northern Michigan University, and I guess it was going into my sophomore year. We were working a hockey camp during the summer, and everybody had wooden sticks back then. So a little boy kind of cracked the stick. So I, intelligently took the stick and pushed it down over my head, and it broke. And the next question was, well, you wouldn't do that with a real stick that isn't broken. So, of course, then I had to grab a stick that wasn't broken and snap it over my head. Now, my ears are ringing when I'm doing this, but I can't let anybody know that. So at the end of the week, it's one of those things, the parents show up to pick up their kids. We play a little scrimmage. Everybody's signing autographs, and all the little kids are say to their parents, like, oh, that coach over there, Coach Laidlaw, he can break sticks over his head. So, of course, I had to show that I could do that. I couldn't let that go and not do it properly. And they said, well, you'll never do it in the game. So I said, okay. And I don't score. My freshman year, I scored one goal. My sophomore year, I scored one goal. So there's a good chance I was never going to score a goal. So going in my junior year, I said, okay, when I score my first goal, I'm going to go to center ice and break my stick over my head. So scored my first goal. And Coach Conley, our coach, did not know what was going on. All the other players obviously did. And I go flying by the bench, ripping my helmet off, go to center ice, turn it face the other goaltender, and break my stick overhead. And I take the two pieces and I'm like, it's center ice. And it was funny because the referee came to me after. He says he was so shocked that he saw me do that. He should have given me a 10-minute misconduct, probably should have for what I did, but he just couldn't believe that I did it. So, and of course, that summer, then I get drafted by the New York Rangers, and Freddie Shero was the coach and general manager, I believe. So they thought it was fantastic because he was with the old Broad Street Bullies, so they drafted this guy that breaks sticks over their head. So that got out there a lot too. You posted. Let me see here. You posted a pic in Playland the old days. If you had a Greensburg facility, would you live there or get out of town as quick as possible after practice? Well, you got to remember, back when we played, it was a whole different time. We've talked about it before in the show, how different things were, training methods, equipment, obviously money, the type of players that were drafted, the facilities, the training and everything. In our day, and I know it's going to sound a little bit barbaric, but part of a team and being close as a team was everybody being together after practice, after games, going for lunch, having a few beers. And that was really part of it, that they would have beer on the plane, beer on the bus. It was really encouraged. That was part of the culture of being on the team. Now, the beer drinking obviously wasn't the best thing for our body, but the bonding was really like an important part of it. And for me as a player, that was like, again, I wasn't that great of a player. I had to be real. The team was everything. So Larry's joked around a few times that when he got to the team, first thing I just said, well, if you want to go find out where to go for lunch, call Laidlaw. He's one going. So now though the game has changed so much. The conditioning, improving yourself as a player. If you were to get hurt, there's better training methods. We just didn't like. For me, I hurt my back at the end of my career, and I was so stubborn. I just didn't want to get on a training table because I felt like that was going to weaken me, which is a total wrong way of looking at it. So these players are much more educated now. They have a lot more resources available to them. So listen, I would still start being part of being on a team is that bonding experience. That's a great part of it. So I still would be, I think I would still be that kind of guy that would want to be with my teammates, but maybe a little bit smarter, maybe not sit at the old pub as long as we did in the past. Let me see here. Okay, Susan. Been a tough year for us older Ranger fans. Rod Gilbert and now Emile Francis. It should be a banner for him. He was the Rangers. Good point. It has been, and if you look even farther, Susan, you're right with the Rangers, but even New York hockey in general, as you know, we've gotten to be friends with Clark Gillies, who played with the Islanders. We lost him as well. So yeah, it has been a tough year. Some legendary New York athletes, particularly in the hockey world. Emile Francis' stories. I didn't really get to know Emile very much. He was not working with the team when I got here. And then when we were at events, I would be at events with him, but he was always, the older guys would just flock to him. So I really never got a chance to exchange conversation with him that much, say hello. And he knew who I was. I knew who he was, obviously. But again, I've heard so many great things about him. Kevin Allen and I, who do the show together, Kevin probably interviewed him. He said probably 100 times. And he was just like an encyclopedia, he said, whether it was the current game and his opinion of what was going on, teams from the past, players from the past that he could talk about. So he said he's great. And I do remember Emile Francis, I think it was when they retired. Remember, it was a Jean Mattel or somebody's number. Anyways, he got up to speak. And he just had this commanding voice too. Like he spoke so well and like so confidently. And you could tell that everybody, all the guys that play with him, when he spoke, it's like, okay, it's time to be quiet and listen to Emile speak. Rod, obviously, I think it goes, you don't need to say too much how much people loved him, fans, this was part of his job was to be out in the community, but he wasn't just out in the community. Like he really, when he went out to an event to greet people, everybody you talked to, like even yesterday we were skating around the ice, people were coming up and talking about Rod Gilbert and how they really enjoyed speaking to him and how when he spoke, like he was really engaged in the conversation and I could tell that he really cared. Like people are always telling stories about how he would remember something about that person, some event that took place they were at together. I know I told a story. We were at a golf tournament, must be 7 or 8 years ago, at Trump's golf course, and I can't remember where it is. And we were in the ballroom where the dinner was, and those big, thick doors. I went to exit, and the door swung out, and it was jammed. So I went to lean into the door and push it really hard. I did not know Rod was on the other side, leaning in, about to grab the door handle and open it. So the door, I smacked it pretty hard, and it smacked right into Rod's head. So now I step out the door, and all I see is, Rod's cut. Like it's one of those cuts in your head here where it splits, and it doesn't bleed right away. And I'm looking at him, I'm feeling so bad because here's this great guy, and he didn't go down either, but I hit him hard. And you could see the blood start coming out, and I felt so bad. But he would tell that story every time I was around. He would pull people together and tell it. He loved it. He loved the story. So I guess it was good for him. But here's a question: do I wish I could have played for Emile Francis? From all the talks, listen, I will never look back and regret anything about my career. I had a fantastic career. Even we joke around about not liking Ted Sater or whatever. But you know what? That's part of it. It's never going to be perfect. And I was still playing in the NHL and playing for the Rangers organization, so I will never regret any of that. But all the great things I heard about Emile Francis and how much it was like he wanted it to be a real team. So and that for me that was it. Because I talk about the team so much. Like I just wasn't a good enough player to play if I wasn't like a real team situation where the team was really important. So, when I got to New York, first Freddie Shearer was the coach, and that was him too. As much as we joke around about the drinking beer, but that was that's what he wanted. He wanted the team together, tight, and always, going out for dinners together, going for lunch together. Same thing, with Craig Patrick, even when he took over, when we went in that run in the playoffs my first year. big thing with him too. We had a really good team. We had that brawl out in LA. And again, the game has changed a lot, but that brawl really brought us together even more because we didn't have that great of a regular season. And we went into LA and won there and had that big brawl. So it was really important to us. And then, after that, when Herbie came in, the same thing with Herbie. As much as Herbie did all the wild stuff, the weaving, bobbing, and all this kind of stuff, and the speeches, what he really wanted was a team that was really tight and that would fight for each other. And even like he wanted you to fight against him. Even like he would do things sometimes where he kind of tests you as individuals and as a team to say, screw you, Herbie, we're going to go do this. Like there's a line in the movie where I think Craig was sitting in the car one time with the doctor, and the doctor said that Herbie's got a plan for everything, and maybe it's that if they hate him enough, they won't hate each other anymore because all the guys are from like Minnesota or Boston, or whatever. So that was definitely with Herbie. He wanted, and I was really lucky that. And the same thing with my junior coach, Rick Comley, or my college coach, Rick Comley. So the team was really important. Daniel, what we got here? Who was your favorite defensive partner to play with? Wow, that's again, I gotta tell you, I was really lucky in that. Like it seemed like the coaches always put me with people that were those team guys. So even going back to LA, I'm going to go backwards in this. And I was out in LA. Tim Waters. Now a lot of people may not even remember who Tim Waters was, but he was one of the best all-time team players that I've ever seen. He played in Winnipeg a big chunk of his career. Then he got traded to Los Angeles, and we played together. So it was Tim and Tom. And it was funny because when Wayne Gretzky first got traded there, Marty McSorley was there and everything. And Marty, to his credit, had really gone from being a player at the start that couldn't really play. I mean, he'd fight everybody. That's why he stayed in the league, but he really turned himself into a player. And he wanted to play a big role with the Kings. And I admired him for that. Now, Marty's a little vocal with it too. There was one game, for example, I think we dressed like 7 defensemen. And I think it was Brian Maxwell was the defensive coach at that time. Rod Victoric was head coach, and they just loved Tim and Tom. And Luc Robitaille, who was president, we still laugh about this now. He's president of the Kings. So we had 7 defensive dressed, and they would play Tim and Tom like every other shift. And it was driving some of the other guys crazy. Like Jay Wells, John B says here, he was on the team. And it wasn't like we didn't want it to be that way because it was really awkward for Tim and I. But what are we going to do when the coach tells us to go on the ice? You got to go on the ice. And they just loved us. And the joke was because we weren't the most talented guys, but we as a unit, him and I together, did our job. So the coaches loved us. So it kind of became the thing, like Tim and Tom all the time. And like I said, I haven't talked to Luke in a while, but when I do talk to him, it is funny. That's one of the first things he says is Tim and Tom, because coaches were always saying that. And it was, like I said, it was kind of embarrassing for Tim and I because we knew who we were. We knew, I wasn't, we weren't star players. We just were doing our job. So, yes. Yeah. Mark Hardy was there as well. So we just touched on the book getting done. So once the book gets done, I think we're going to do a cookbook after that, after the other book. We'll make it kind of fun and motivational and everything too. Are you TNT? Are you saying you remembered us? Or hold on right here. What is your favorite hole? What is your fondest memory of your first season with the Rangers? Wow, there's a lot of memories. Thanks for the question there, Lisa. So I told this story before too. I think it's a memory because of the timing of it. So, anybody that's had a dream of something since they were a kid, when you're finally starting to get the dream accomplished and fulfill your goals. Obviously mine was to play in the National Hockey League from 6 years old. There's nothing else I wanted to do. All the eggs were in one basket. I was, it was one of those things now. There was no plan B. It was plan A. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't made it. Gone through training camp, had a good training camp. Told the story about, knocking Phil Esposito down in training camp and all those things. Had a big scrap in a rookie game against Hector Marini, who was a tough guy, and that went well, and some other scraps. Was playing well. So I was in the lineup opening night up in Toronto. I should be up in Boston. So I told a story about how I was so nervous in this first game because, again, here's your dreams that come true. I shot the puck in my own net. John Davidson was the goaltender. He should have stopped it. I don't know what he was thinking about. So it's one of those things. So now that was early in the game. I did that. So you go through the whole game now. All these thoughts are going through your head. Have I screwed up my NHL career? What have I done? Nobody's talking to you because it's not a coachable moment. It's not like the coach can come up to you and say, well, Tom, don't shoot the puck in your own net. That's pretty obvious. So now with the next, luckily we were playing right away. The next night we were going up to Toronto, my hometown. My hometown's right outside of Toronto, so my parents are there. And Freddie Sherrill had said to myself, I know I've told this, but he said to myself, Eddie Hospodar, myself, Chris Katsopoulos, so we're all big, 6'2", 210, 215 pounds. And he said, no, listen, you're not playing the first 5 minutes of each game. You're not playing the last 5 minutes of each game. And I'm not telling you to fight, but you're all big. What do you think you can do to help the team? So he wanted us to at least be physical players. So I'm carrying the puck through center ice, and Robert Picard butt ends me. For people who don't know, that's, you're allowed, especially back then, you're out the hook more with the blade and end of your stick. Sticking the butt end out, the other end is kind of perceived as a dirty play. Somebody get hurt. I don't really think, looking back at the video, he was trying to hurt me, but he butt ended me. And it was right in front of our bench. The bench jumped up and started yelling, and he knocked me down. And it flashed through my mind, listen, I can't let this happen. It's him or me, because if I let this happen now after what happened last night, I'm going home. They're going to cut me. So I hadn't seen the video for years. I finally saw it about a year ago. Man, I suckered him too. I just stood up and just drilled him as hard as I could. And he went down. It's center ice in Maple Leaf Gardens. So, again, I grew up as a kid watching Hockey Night Canada at Maple Leaf Gardens. And so the building just goes dead quiet. But Daryl Sittler now is coming over to me. And he's the captain of the Leafs. And I'd watched him play when I was a kid. And he's coming over and he's just like, F this and F that, Laidlaw, I'm going to get you, and all this kind of stuff. And I'll never forget. The funny thing was, honestly, I was thinking I wanted to get his autograph. He's coming towards me. I had to snap myself out of it and say, this is Daryl Sittler coming after me. So I had the FU fight with Sittler at center ice. And the rest of the night, nobody did anything to me. And after the game was done, they told me to get a place to stay that I'd made the team. So I'd given them what they wanted. But my parents were both there. And my poor mother, I'd gotten lots of fights before and everything like that and got hurt and everything. But after the game, she was mortified. Here's her son finally makes it to the NHL. And the next day in the paper, local boy should be suspended for the shot. So she was devastated. Her son had resorted to that. But my father obviously loved it. He was the big guy. He didn't say too much, but you could tell it's like, yeah, his son just knocked somebody else at the center ice in Maple Leaf Gardens. So it was pretty good. So that was we were going back to the question about what some fond memories. That was kind of a fond memory in a strange kind of way, and that it was fun. That was the first time that somebody said, "Okay, you get a place. You were on the team." So that was the moment where you were told, "I made the National Hockey League." So that was a pretty good memory. That whole year was great. And then going into the playoffs, we had that run where we beat LA in the first round, beat St. Louis, and finally lost in the semifinals to the Islanders. So that was a great. That whole stretch of time was a great experience for me. And I really learned a lot about myself as a player, improved as a player, my confidence and everything. I played a pretty decent role in the team through all that. So that all that stuff was a lot of fun. So, but I'll never forget that night. Both nights. I'll never forget the first night up in Boston where I shot the puck in my own net, and I won't forget the second night where we're up in Toronto and I made the team finally too. So, what do we got here? What do we got here? Who was the roommate in the team? Who was my roommate? On the team in the 80s. So we did change around once in a while. Thanks, Pete, for the question. We did change around once in a while, but Gresh and I roomed together quite a bit, which was, I don't know if that was a good idea or not. We tell the story. I know we told it over and over, but God, it must have been my second, third year in the league, something like that. We were out in LA, I think it was, and we had some days off. We were going down to San Diego, I think it was. So it's the night before the Super Bowl. We were out and had a few adult beverages. So when we got to San Diego, the Super Bowl was on. We were going to go to our room, order a bunch of beer and shrimp cocktail, everything, just sit there and watch the game. But we had not a lot of sleep the night before, so we sit down and watch the game, lay down in our beds, and they have the trays of beer there, or the ice in the trays. And we wake up, they're handing off the Super Bowl. Somebody else who missed the entire game, and the water's dripping out of the trays because we hadn't drank any of the beer. So it was, so Gresh and I roomed together quite a bit, and we had some fun times. But we were both considered kind of leaders on the team. But again, the big part, and I know it sounds kind of barbaric now when you tell these old stories, but a big part of being a team player and being one of the leaders was being with the guys all the time, with all the social stuff as well. Billy Contradidiac. Very funny. Okay, here he goes. So again, this is Larry Melnick's buddy. He's probably bitter that Larry isn't here. It's just Tom and not Larry. Did I wear the Larry Summit? It is possible. I don't. We never really tested it, but I did. I did have to actually, they had to put a smaller liner, you get the sponge liner or whatever, it was foam liner. They actually had to get a smaller one, a thinner one, fit on my head. So I actually had to sign a waiver to say that I wouldn't sue the helmet company or whatever. Because remember, my first year in the league, 80-81, was the first year they made helmets mandatory, although it was grandfathered in. So if you played before that, you didn't necessarily have to wear a helmet. There's still a lot of guys not wearing it. But there's a few times where if I left my helmet out, particularly at practice, they would take the helmet out and fill it full of pucks to show that it was a bucket. So yeah, I did a large head. It's still like that now. It's hard to find a helmet. So when I go play charity games and clinics and that, I usually go without a helmet, which is people don't really like too much. But let me see here. Who was the best? Ira. Okay, we'll get Ira in here. Who was the best eater on the team? Let me see. Well, of course, he wants me to say it's Chris Kasopoulos because he and Chris Kasopoulos are buddies. Best eater on the team. Well, there's different categories for that, right? Like healthy. I don't think anybody was healthy. Well, Robbie Ftorek came along, and he was one of the first guys that I met that was like really disciplined with his diet. Like if he was to have ice cream with like a M&M in it or something like that, that was a big breakthrough for him. Like Robbie was disciplined with everything. I love playing with. Learned a lot from Robbie Ftorek as a player. And this is a total compliment when I say it to him. He was a small guy who was not that talented. He just made it out of pure heart. And again, I mean that as the ultimate compliment. He was the same way when he came to LA and coached me. And unfortunately for him, although it was great to have Wayne come in and Wayne Gretzky get traded to LA, but those two weren't going to match because Robbie was all about total discipline, 45-second shifts. Everybody gets treated the same way. And to his credit, he wasn't going to change. And it wasn't like he was against Wayne, didn't like Wayne or anything like that. It was more that Robbie loved himself. And I mean, that is a very good thing that he was going to follow through with what he said he was going to do and the way he thought things should be coached, knowing full well that he was probably going to get fired because Wayne just is a different style of play. And it wasn't like Wayne wasn't disciplined, but Wayne had those, Wayne had those things where sometimes he'd have a 3, 4, 5-minute shift. And it wasn't, when you played with Wayne, you understood it wasn't selfish. He just really thought that he had something going that could really help the team. And that just wasn't Robbie's way. And I think Robbie even said to me, no, I don't think, I know he did. Robbie said to me at one point, we were talking about it. He said, listen, Tom, as a coach, you're going to get fired anyways. You might as well go down doing it your way instead of trying to do it somebody else's way. And then you're really not doing it anyway because it's not the right way. So that's right. Robbie did so most other coaches at the time wore suits. And Robbie started wearing, it was more, did he wear sweatsuits or was it sweaters he wore? I thought it was sweaters that he wore, but he was definitely, Robbie was going to do his thing. Yeah. Let me see here. What are they asking here? Danny, what are you asking here? As a country music guy, do you think Casey Musgraves? You know what? I listen to her music. I really don't know if I know what she looks like. Do you ever consider having? We'd love to have some current players on. You try to be careful as a former player that you don't kind of abuse that relationship. Like I've gotten somewhat friendly with Chris Kreider at events. Great guy, funny guy too. I know I told the story, but we were at an event one time. He was telling me how he taught himself, but he learned Russian. I don't think he did it himself, but he can speak Russian fluently. And so when Russian players come in and they don't speak English, he would very often act as an interpreter between the players and the coaches. So sometimes he would tell the coaches something different than what the player was really saying. So, which I thought was pretty funny. It's funny because Kreider is he's just an intelligent guy and hardworking and disciplined and everything, but he does have that little kid sense of humor to him, so it's pretty good. So, yes. So here's somebody we are going to have on, and Billy, I get it once I give him a hard time set it up. He's buddies with Tim Peel. So Tim Peel was the referee. Apparently he had a fantastic personality. He was the one that got himself a little bit of trouble. He was going to retire anyways, apparently, but he's refereeing a game against Philly and somebody, and he made the comment, I'm going to put the screws to these guys or something. So he got fired. But again, he was going to retire anyways. And by all accounts, and Bill says so himself, that he's just a fantastic guy, very funny. So we're going to try to get him on the show. Here's a good one. So what were you thinking picking a fight with Marty McSorley? So that was it was Marty's first year in the league. I think it was only like his second or third game in the league. And so at that point, I still thought I was, I could fight, but I learned, here's the deal. So before I got to the NHL, I thought I was going to fight everybody in the National Hockey League. And I was a decent fighter. Then once you get to the NHL, you realize, okay, well, I can fight, but then this means you're going to have to fight every night. And you're going to fight Clark Gillies, you're going to fight Bob Nystrom, you're going to fight Paul Holmgren, Ben Wilson, on and on. Because everybody in the league had at least 2-3 guys that were fighters, and they needed to fight to stay in the league. If they didn't fight, then they weren't doing their job. I realized I wasn't in that category. I could fight guys, but to think, because what happens is, like, the night before the game, all you're thinking about is who you're fighting. But again, at that point in my career, I was still, a decent fighter. So Marty's out there. And again, I have told this so many times, but he couldn't play. He couldn't stand up, but to his credit, he was going to fight everybody. He knew what he had to do to play in the NHL, and that was to fight everybody and fight every night. And he was going to do it. So there was a scrum going on in the corner, and I think I was lined up with somebody else, and he came over and wanted to go. So you can see the video of it. It was pretty scrap. I probably got him early, and he got me later on in the fight. But I would say it was a draw. But the problem was after that every game we played after that against Pittsburgh, he knew I would fight him. And obviously Barry Beck was there too, and Barry would fight, but he'd rather fight me than Barry, and I don't blame him. And we would rather have Barry on the ice than sit in the penalty box. So he wanted to go fight me. So he kept coming over to me. There'd be nothing going on. We'd just be skating. Laidlaw, let's go. Because he wanted to get his fight in. He wanted to show his coaches that he was going to fight all the time. So I finally would say to him, listen, I'm not keeping you in the league anymore. I'm not fighting you at all. I'm showing you I can fight, but I'm not doing it anymore. We then got to be teammates in LA. And like I said, I totally respected him because he just worked so hard at his game. He went from being a guy that really had a hard time skating to a legitimate player, power play, penalty killing, every situation, scoring goals. And he still maintained the fight and the toughness too. Like, he didn't stop fighting. Like, some guys, when they become more of a player, stop the fighting, but he kept doing it. I got a ton of credit for him and his, the way he, took himself from what he was when he first started, what he ultimately became. So like that. Yes, this is true here. So Donnie here said, Bob Nystrom would be a great guest. You have a lot in common at this time. Guys, yeah. And obviously, we talked about Clark Gillies and the connection there. So Bob Nystrom, we played against each other all the time. Like, my coaches in playoffs would always line me up against him. So, and his coaches would always line me up against me. So, and he was tough, man. And not just tough physically, but mentally tough too. Like, he just wouldn't quit. So I talked about how I fought Hector Marini in a rookie game, my first training camp. And Hector was a tough kid too. So I don't know him that well, but I won that one. And I've lost other ones, and I won that one. And so next game, they put me in. I don't think I was due to play in the next NHL preseason game, which was against the Islanders. So Hector Marini was on the Islanders minor league team, had that fight the night before. Now all of a sudden I'm in the lineup. And I'll never forget, Bob Nystrom came right over to me right away. Like, they must have told him and say, Laidlaw beat up Hector Marini pretty good. So Nystrom came right over to me, and it's like this moment, like, oh God, if I want to get into this where I've got to fight this guy every night, because that's the way it was going to be with Nystrom. He just was going to fight every night and I don't think he did it as much because he had to do it, although that was part of his game, but he knew that was the role he had to play for his team. He was the same kind of guy. I have total respect for him. We played a playoff game one time, and he gave me the forearm shiver. And I thought I knew I was out of it, but my thought at the time before I saw the video recently was that I was still able to play, but was kind of out of it and collapsed when I was in the locker room. After seeing the video, he knocked me down, and I was out of it, and actually had to spend the night in the hospital. And he wasn't afraid of anybody. He certainly wasn't afraid of me. But he called me. He got a hold of me and called me the next day. And I wouldn't say he apologized. I guess it was kind of an apology, because we played hard against each other. And I hope he respected me, and I certainly respected him. And we never crossed the line with that kind of stuff. But that was a game. I did it later on in my career. Jimmy Carson had been a teammate of mine. He got traded to Edmonton. We were playing a playoff series, and he was a friend of mine, but we wanted to win. And I did basically the same thing to him, gave him the forearm shiver and knocked him out. And I felt bad about it. Well, maybe not at the time. I didn't feel bad because it was helping our team win. And that's the way Mason looked at it too. So he called me to apologize. The next game we played, I think, was a game to knock us out of the playoffs. And we went through the handshake line. He pulled me aside and he apologized again. But next time we played each other, we're right back at it, banging heads again. So I tons of respect for him. I'd love to get him on the show. And apparently, if I'm talking to Clark, Bob's really kept himself in good shape and everything. And part of it is too, and Clark was saying this, that because of all the fights Bobby Nystrom was in, maybe got a lot of concussions, so he's really trying to maintain his health and take care of himself and everything too. So yeah, we'd love to get him on the show. Good guys. I know it's funny, we talked about this before. And it's terrible that we lost Clark, but it was such an honor to get to know him over the last couple of years. That we were doing this Thursday show. Today's Friday, obviously, but doing the Thursday show. And Clark contacted me. And I really never, I think I'd seen him at charity events. We'd say hello to each other before, but he contacted me wanting to be on the show. It was so funny because he was like a little kid. Can I come on? Can I come on, Tommy? I guess you can do whatever you want to do. Yeah, you're coming on. And it was just like, I think we're on with Dave Gresh, and I think Mel might have been on at the time too. And it was just more like we're all buddies, and played with each other. So, what's Susan got going here? With so many 3-point games, do you think the league will ever change to a 3-point? I don't know. I know there's a lot of 3-point games, and there has been discussion about that stuff, but I don't think it gives. My opinion is there's no imbalance. Like there's not somebody that gets favorite treatment or helps somebody more than others. I think it's even for everybody. So my short answer is no. I mean, I love the game now. I mean, you always have to tweak things and make things better. The game is so much different than when we played. Like we talked, the money, the equipment, the training, the travel, the style of players now. Like for defensemen, for example, like when I played, like Mel and I, we were meant to bang heads and hit people and hack and whack. And now it's more. Listen, the physical game is still important. You look at Trouba and how physical he is out there, but it's more getting the puck out of your zone quicker. That's more important than maybe we played it back then. But so I don't know, Susan. I don't necessarily see any changes, but. Again, I'm not in the league stuff, and I like the game now the way it is. So, I'm good friends. No, let's get this straight. So let's straighten out the Ira here. Ira's like misleading here. He's awesome. I'm good friends with him. He is my insurance broker. I have his cell if you want to reach him. Well, first of all, we'll take the cell number. But to say he's like good friends with you, Ira, I mean, I'll talk to Bob and I'll get this dirt. Maybe when we get Bob on, we'll have Ira on too. Let's see, like, are they really good friends or not? What do we got here? Has Dave ever, let me see what we got here. James is asking, has Dave ever brought up the brawl in Chicago in 84 when he got hit in the head? Ooh. I don't know if we really ever talked about that much, but I remember that. That was O'Callaghan. I don't know what happened there too, because if you remember the play, Chicago just scored a goal and Dave knocked down Larmer. I think was it Larmer? Whoever was on their team. I'm pretty sure it was Larmer. And but it wasn't a vicious hit. It's more like they just bang into each other. And all of a sudden, O'Callaghan comes like flying in from the blue line and just cross-sticks Dave right in the shin. I got him right there. And I remember, like, what was that all about? Like, O'Callaghan wasn't that kind of a player. That didn't seem to be some dirty player or whatever. And apparently, as I'm told later, that he was in the locker room crying after O'Callaghan was. I know he was crying because he thought somebody was going to kill him, or like he just lost his mind and did something that he couldn't believe he did. But yeah, that was nasty. That was, and rightfully so. We all came off the bench, and it was a huge ball trying to get at O'Callaghan. And to their defense, the Chicago players did what they were supposed to do too, whether they liked what he did or not. They defended him, and we had a pretty lengthy brawl. But that was one of those ones I looked at, and there's really, we can talk about, Dave Brown cross-checking Thomas Sandstrom in the back of the head or neck, wherever it was. Still ridiculous, but there was just somewhat. I mean, I could see from Philly's end why they wanted to get Thomas, because he was such, like he was hard guy to play against. But with the O'Callaghan issue with Dave, it was like, why would you do that? There's nothing going on. That's something that happened earlier in the game. But I don't think Dave's ever really talked about it. Not with me. I don't think we really talked about it that much. But Ira here, he's loyal. Ira is loyal to. I'm loyal to me. Okay. So here's somebody viewing your opinion. Jack Sullivan doesn't like Dave Brown too much. I know I said this before, and I understand totally why Ranger fans don't like Dave Brown, but that one play alone, cross-checking Thomas Sandstrom. But if you ever to meet him, he's just this fantastic guy. He's just not at all what you saw out there. And again, I think he's still scouting with the Rangers too. Here's one too. And then there's the Hospital Art Erickson shot in Hartford. Yeah, and that's the same thing. And listen, like, I think Eddie watches the show sometime, and Eddie and I are friends. And I don't think we've really ever talked about it, but that was one of those plays too. I don't know if you ever saw it. So Jan Eriksson, who was one of the most, like, Jan played hard, but why somebody would want to hurt him, I don't understand. But he was coming up out of our zone with the puck, or just received the pass and kind of had his head down. And Eddie came in, which is fine. If you come in for the blue line, you want to hit the guy hard, that's fine. But Eddie elbowed him right in the head. And it was one of those ones like, okay, first of all, why are you doing it to Jan Eriksson? But we had Barry Beck, Nick Fatio was on our team at the time too, so everybody just went after Eddie, And again, one of the situations, Hartford players did what they had to do. They protected Eddie. And the referees finally get him off the ice. And I'll never forget, I was watching the video because Bubba and Nicky Patir were chasing Eddie down the ice with the referee, trying to get to him before he got to the door, and they ultimately got thrown out. So that was another of those ones too. And like I said, with Eddie, when Eddie was definitely one of those players. So when he's on your team, you love having him on your team because he's going to stick up for you and he'll fight and hit and do everything. But when he's on the other team, you're like, what do you do? We had one game in Philly when Mike Keenan was coaching, and Eddie was skating around warm up, and we were shooting pucks. I think it was like myself and Mike Allison. We were shooting pucks at Eddie's feet, skating around from. So we're on our end of the warm up, and we're shooting pucks at Eddie's end, trying to hit him with the skates. And for Eddie, I guess Keenan was watching this whole thing and pulled him out of the lineup, wouldn't let him play because we were doing it. I don't know what he thought Eddie was going to do, is come over and have a brawl with us in the warm ups. So. That was poor Eddie, but I see him now at events, and he's funny. He's got that goofy way about him, and he's done really well. Him and his wife, I think, in the real estate business, kids and everything. I think one of his sons had gone to West Point for a while too, but a lot of stuff. He's good. Yeah, it is funny because where's this brawl? So talking about the brawl, discussing brawl in playoffs. Somebody broke his crown in that fight. Was on. Oh, he was on another show. So my first year in the league, that 80-81 team, we played LA. So I think LA was second or third in the league. So back then they ranked them 1 through 16. There's only 21 teams in the league. We had divisions, but for playoff purposes, they ranked them 1 through 16. So I think LA was third, which means we were 14th overall, and we played in the playoffs. And it was a 3 out of 5 series, I think it was. And so I believe it was the second game, or maybe the first game, we had this big brawl against the Kings. Bubba had one-punched Rick Chartrand, that famous punch where he leaned over the referee's shoulder and I think it was a left to, just knocked Chartrand down, cut him wide open. So that happened. And then at the end of the first period, I believe it was, we all got together. Teams were all coming off the bench to go to the locker room. And we all got together, pushing and shoving. And the announcer, Bill Chadwick, said it was me that went after Marcel Dion first, but it wasn't. It was Eddie. And Eddie knew what he was doing. He was going because Marcel Dion was a fighter, so Eddie went after him, and of course that started the brawl, and it went on for, I don't know how long it went on for, but one of the famous things was so Eddie Hosmer got backed up to what it was the Kings bench. It was supposed to be empty, all the players on the ice, and one of the players for the Kings that wasn't dressed, he was in a suit, grabbed Eddie from behind, and watched him. We didn't know who it was. But Nicky was up in the stands. He wasn't dressed either. So he comes flying down. And the video's hilarious. He comes flying down and grabs this poor guy and just ragdolls him. And it was hilarious. And I don't know even if he punched him, but it's one of those things where he just grabbed him by the shirt and just threw him all over the place. And it was pretty funny. So that was a real bonding thing for us too. Like I said before, that team, that was pretty good. What do you got here too? Barry Shelley. We haven't talked Barry here yet today. Remember one game? Oh, you can hear, so this was in Philly. Hear Billy yell at Eddie where he wanted to fight Barry. So Eddie was yapping at Barry. I don't think he really wanted to fight him. Barry yelled at him that he was going to get George McPhee to take care of him. I remember that scene too. So I think what happened before that, Ron Greshner had the puck. No, Ron Greshner went in to hit Eddie Hospodar, and Eddie cross-checked Ron right in the ear, and George stepped up. And it was a pretty good scrap. And I think George won the fight against, and that was, Eddie knew how to fight, and he was much bigger than George. But George gave it to him pretty good. So later on, then Eddie was yapping at Barry, and Barry said to him, you could hear in the mic, I remember that too, saying, he says, I'll just get George to beat you up. I'll get George to beat you up. So it's funny. And it was funny because I think, if I'm correct in this, Barry Beck and Eddie Hosmer were roommates too. So they had a few scenes like that. Eddie, I remember, was in Minnesota at one point too. The same kind of thing was going on where he was, listen, I wouldn't have done it either, but I mean, I don't know if Eddie was really challenging Barry, because I don't think that was a good idea for anybody to do that. I do remember, it's funny because, particularly against the Islanders, I think Bubba and Clark Gillies knew each other, but they're also the two biggest guys and toughest guys in the world too. And it was kind of like, you could watch, there's that mutual respect. Like they would go hit each other, and they would make sure that the other guy wasn't doing anything to their teammates, but you could tell they both respected each other too. Wow, Danny, you're asking a lot of questions today. This is good. This is good when I'm by myself. Did you get to know Chartrand? Yes. Rick Chartrand was another great. We had, man, I was lucky in my career. I keep thinking, great team player, really good team player. But he liked to have fun too. I know we told the story before about, we had this little pub that we used to go to after practice, and we knew the owner really well. So we'd get in and start bartending, and Charlie just got there, and he didn't we all knew him, and he'd been around for a while too, but he just stepped in and started bartending. All of a sudden, he was funny. He just had that personality. He was a great guy, really, like in the locker room, really keeping it light, but would stick up for his teammates and compete and everything. But like a lot of us, he'd like to have his adult beverages, and he used to wear like the big sweat bags under his equipment, like garbage bags almost, to sweat all the booze out of him. So he was a really good guy, but great teammate. I spoke to him a few years ago too. He was someplace working at some camp out in the mountains or something. I can't, something similar to that, or some place. He sounded like he was doing well. So let me see here. Bubba needs to make an appearance on here. Yeah, a big part. James mentions this about getting Bubba on the show. A big part of Bubba is that just being over in China where he is, and just hard the time difference getting things going too. So, but I think what I'm hearing is too that, I mean, obviously we heard all the stuff with Pav and Barry's son, all that unfortunate stuff. But I think Barry's got a book coming out now too, from what I understand. So I hope he's doing well. He still looks like he's in fantastic shape. He posts some pictures sometimes online. It looks like he's doing well too. So, all right. So just to recap where we're at here, like a little 2-year recap. And I'd like to hear your guys' opinion how I should be taking this. So we started off the show approximately 2 years ago with Ron Duguay, Ron Grestier, and Dave Maloney. Then we lost Dave and Dukes. Dukes is now with Sarah Palin, so he's too busy for us anyways. And then we replaced him with 2 fantastic people, and James Patrick and Larry Melnick. Now we're down to Ron Grestier let me know he can't do it. James is busy. I don't hear from Larry Melnick whether he can do a show or not, so I'm assuming he can. And then obviously he doesn't show up, so I'm basically by myself. So I don't know what we should do. We should try to like pull them back in again, or just find some new people, Mike Alice and Mike Rogers, those kind of guys, and just keep on replacing them with new people. But again, I'll see Barry, or supposedly I'm going to see Ron Grestier tomorrow going up to Binghamton. And we'll see how he's doing. See, maybe he's in the Mohegan Sun. He just doesn't have time for us. Who knows what it is? But listen, it was great. And I really appreciate everybody sending in all the questions and everything. Here's a guaranteed thing that will not happen. Ira Schuld be the co-host. No, it'll never happen, Ira. Never. No. All right. So, and I really respect Deb's opinion here. Pull them back in next week. All right. So I'll do my best. So I guess it's up to me then to kind of reach out to them to say, listen, I understand you guys are busy. Please come back on. Is that the approach I should have with them? So we'll see what happens. All right, everybody. Have a great night. It is Friday, so I think we should everybody have fun tonight. So just full disclosure. So we do the Sunday cooking show, obviously, on Sunday, but I'm going to be up in Binghamton. So I'm doing the cooking show. I'm taping it today. I don't want to mislead anybody. I'm going to tape it today and then play it on, post it on Sunday. So again, full disclosure. I don't want to lie. Yes, here's a good suggestion too. Sarah, wouldn't that be funny to have Sarah Palin and Ron Duguay on the show? That'd be fantastic. Here's another. I'm glad people brought this up too before we go. Doug DeVito, not Danny DeVito, like Mel says. I didn't know he had surgery or something, but he sounds like he's good. He was busy today and could not join us. So we'll see everybody next. Now, you know what? Maybe I'll tell the guys that we're doing the show on Thursday from now on, and I just won't do it on Thursday. We'll do it on Friday. We'll just do it by ourselves, and you guys can ready questions and we'll talk. So, okay. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Have some fun. Get better every day. All right. Let's make this a great weekend.